International Coaching Week. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for spending time this evening. I understand we may also have people who are from other chapters around the world. So here in Toronto, Canada, it is just 9:30 on Monday morning. I know for you it's in the evening. Couple of housekeeping rules. If you've joined us and you have some background noise, or actually even if you don't have background noise, please mute your phones right now. That way we can ensure we have a great quality. Today we're going to be talking about coaching many, and it is the first of 5 presentations this week on this topic of expanding our coaching conversation. So I want to welcome all of you. Thank you. We've got about 80 plus people joining us. So we are going to be doing things like using our chat function throughout the presentation today. I've got an hour of great content. You will be able to access the materials from today's session. And as an author and as a practitioner coach myself, there is going to be no shortage of resources coming your way. So I'd invite you to sit back, take people today, think about how you can apply this, and think about your work right now as it relates to what we're increasingly terming coaching many. That was the name of my 2013 book. But I think for all of us who straddle the realm of group and team, it can be, 1 hour you're with a group, 1 hour you're with a team. It may be systemic coaching. So we're going to look a little bit at the high level overview. Later this week, you're going to be looking at issues like building trust and connection, competencies for successful group coaching, expanding presence, and other key issues. So this is really setting the framework of our span of what this work can look like and sound like. I want to give you an idea of some of the key process pieces and, of course, some questions you can be asking potential clients to help them determine, are you a group? Are you a team? Am I coaching groups and teams? So within this, let's get going because we only have an hour. We are seeing just an explosion of this work in so many different ways. Intact teams, project teams, as you heard, my own affinity for virtual teams. This is my 4th call of the day, and it's only 9:30. I started at 5 a.m. Toronto time. Like you in India, this work has rippled out from Asia all the way across to Africa, Europe, North America, South America, Central America. And what I think is really important is people are hungry for better conversations. We spend a bulk of our time at work, and I think that's one of the reasons why team coaching has really become such an important modality for development. It's one of many things, and I hope that you'll leave today's session with an appreciation of all the different things you can be doing. I'd like to bring your voices into the room right away and share with us using chat. How do you see yourself expanding the coaching to more than one person or to many? Just take 30 seconds right now, turn to chat. If this is one of your first times on Zoom, you will usually find chat close to your start and stop video button. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. But just share with us, how you see yourself expanding the coaching conversation to more than one person. That's going to help me adjust my comments today, because this is an exploding area. This is very much an area that is growing in size and scope. We've got, a lot of different people on the call working with collective goals, working with people who might prefer group work over individual work. And these are some of the reasons people come to group and team coaching. So while I'm hearing from you, here are some examples of different types of group coaching. You might have a group of business owners that want to grow. They want to grow their own business. They each own their own business, but they want to engage with a coach. And so they connect bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, with that coach for a period of about 6 months. What's interesting is group coaching today in 2019 can be anything from a month of daily meetings to 3 or 6 months of bi-weekly or weekly meetings to a year, where coaches are bringing people together for a very fixed focus. And just as you're listening to me speak, take note in the chat of people in the group here already that are really looking at How do we do group coaching? What is the difference with group facilitation or team building? And these are some of the issues we're going to be getting at today. So really, how do we differentiate not only between example one, group of business owners, which is group coaching. We have distinct business owners coming together around a collective cause. I want to be a better business owner, or I want to grow my business. There might also be scenario B. A group of individuals are coming together for a new project. They engage a coach to help them hit the ground running. Now, B, of this individuals working together for a project signal a slight differentiation. And in fact, when people have a common mission and common goals and a collective entity of being, that is taking us into the realm of team coaching. So notice there's a distinction. And in group coaching, we're often bringing together these discrete individuals versus a project-related focus where there's common ground, common roles, common reasons. You're probably working with a team. And we'll talk about some of those nuances because although the tools are similar, the focus is different. I've got two more examples. And as you're getting into this, I'd like you to share with us what you see as the third bullet, which is a coach who has worked with individual leaders, wants to scale their business. The coach wants to scale their business, so they approach organizations with a generic program to support new leaders at that organization. Based on what I've said, is it more of an individual focus of the group, or do you think these new leaders would be a collective team focus? Just share with us on chat what you think it is. And I'll give you 20 more seconds to do that. And I'll read you the fourth example, which is a coach wants to support families and is committed to creating a group for parents to connect and meet virtually. There is a fixed end and start date, and are also considering offering an annual group as well. Well, C and D are really, more in the group realm, okay? So we can have groups taking the shape of parents, business owners, new leaders at an organization. They usually will not have the collective shared focus where a project team will have, or an intact team, or a virtual team. So these are just some examples to give you the sort of the lay of the land. What is interesting is we're going back to our basics, right? Always we want to come back to what is coaching. And it doesn't matter whether we're coaching individuals, we're coaching teams, we're coaching groups of parents. Coaching is coaching is coaching. And so I think probably one of the questions you'll commonly get asked is, what is team coaching or what is group coaching? To John's question earlier, how does it differ from group facilitation or team building? And in fact, we want to really reinforce that in coaching, there are many philosophies and skills embedding this work. These are our ICF competencies and our framework of practice. So ultimately, we always want to hold our clients as naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. Our clients are the ones that are shaping the process. So unlike team building or group facilitation, where the team builder, the group facilitator is coming in and setting the frame, we want to start our conversations always with group or team, what are your goals? And that is really the coach's stance. What are your goals? How will you measure success at the end of our time together? How will you know that you've gotten what you need out of this process? So team coaches, group coaches are also going to be involved in ongoing accountability. And sort of the next litmus test of are we doing coaching or are we doing a one-off development is, what are those accountability touch points? As you heard me say, group coaching could be as short as a month if people are meeting daily, right? And so there are accountability groups which meet daily for 30-day challenges, 31-day challenges, 28 days. But the focus here is the coach is holding the focus on those individual goals and the ongoing accountability. So very much accountability is woven in. Now, I think I should say that as a professional myself, I've been involved in group and team development, not just coaching, but in group and team development for the last 30 years. At the young age of 17, I started leading teams, leading groups in one of our provincial parks. The difference was, as a non-coach, I wasn't putting as much of a focus on the group's goals or the group's accountability. this needs to be one of the primary focus areas of the coach. If we're not holding the space for check-ins around how people are doing, what action they're taking, we do need to question, are we coaching? These really are two essential elements. And 3 and 4 that I'd like to add when I'm talking to organizations or even clients about what the process is, we want to reinforce that in coaching, it's about taking action. It's about helping people do things quicker, faster, better, and sometimes slowing it down. I think many of you probably also work with type A leaders. And a lot of leaders can self-coach in today's world. But the value of a professional coach is in pulling on the brakes with that client, helping them look around and understand how is their drive for results getting in the way? How is their drive and communication actually distancing people that they're leading? So coaching in action is also about awareness. And you will note that 2 of our 11 core coaching competencies are action and awareness. And as coaches, I think we want to be very clear, how are we holding that balance of action and awareness? With individual clients, you might have someone who is doing like a 50-50 focus on both, or someone might be more focused on awareness, 80%, focused on action, 20%. The complexity, or I think the opportunity and interest in group coaching is in a group of 6 or 8 people, you might have people with a different blend of that action and awareness. So with that, I hope you'll think back to these things next time you get asked, what does group and team coaching focus on? We really want to make sure that we're leaning into these skills as a coach. I've got a few more definitions as well. So how do we define it? Going back to effective group coaching, which, although I'm the author, it was the world's first book to be published on group coaching 10 years ago almost now. Really, in group coaching, we're taking our coaching principles, we're putting them in a small group. Notice here the number 15 for ICF credentialing purposes, and I would say for any purpose in coaching, group coaching is small scale. The maximum number of our group can be 15. In fact, most groups virtually are 4 to 8 group members. In person, you might have groups as small as 4 or anywhere up to 15. Just recognize that every time we add a new person into the mix, similar to these multicolored people down here, we're adding a whole new layer of personalities, ways of seeing the world, ways of communicating. And so just as I've said, we're working with that group around their goals to help them gain awareness around what's working and what's not. A lot of coaches find to get traction, there needs to be enough common ground in the group. And that's why I've been sharing things like you might host a group for business owners or parents or new leaders. Even within those demographic groups, there's enough diversity to really keep it exciting, but there's enough similarity to make sure that people are finding traction with each other. Because part of group coaching is the collective learning experience. And part of the team coaching experience is also that collective experience. So we've got some questions coming up from Vasu. Vasu is saying, what's the ideal for group and team coaching? This can vary. I would say groups, again, that 4 to 8 range really is a good starting spot. Manny is asking, will you touch on masterminds? And I would say masterminds, are a little different than pure group coaching. This is where we start getting a lot of nuances. Masterminds are usually more facilitated through the advice of group member to group member. Less of a role in the mastermind holder, the person who's bringing people together. When we are working as group coaches, we're still having some focus on, what are these elements? What are these things that we are co-creating together? So just as you see here on this next slide, a group coach will really work with the group in the first session to co-create the roadmap. What are we looking at? Let's use the example of new business owners or new leaders. Chances are they're going to want to look at maybe emotional intelligence issues. Who am I? What are my strengths? What's my vision? What's getting in the way? And after the first conversation, we really want to map out where we collectively as a group are going to go. That's a little different than a mastermind, right? I think after about 100 years of having masterminds all over the world, masterminds are quite fluid in that people are invited week to week or session to session to come with their greatest business opportunity or challenge. And while there may be some group coaches that include an element of laser coaching, of what's your greatest opportunity or challenge this week, there are also elements where we do want to make sure that we're co-creating, really working with that group around typical coaching areas, blind spots, strengths, opportunity, challenges. So with that, we've got some background noise. I'll invite you to please turn your mute on if you've got any background noise, just so we can keep a clean recording. Thank you. And hope that this gives you some idea. Again, the group for someone who is returning to work post-maternity leave is probably going to look very different than new managers program. The theme areas really should be set or co-created with the coach and the group members. And with group coaching, that's going to be based on the goals of the group. So as I've said here, group coaching is much more similar to individual coaching. In just a minute, we're going to go to team coaching, which is all about the collective. But in groups, you're going to see that really it is more about my goals. If I'm a business owner joining this group, I might say my goal this quarter is to double my sales. And that's what I'm going to be driving on. Nitin, who's also in the group, might be focusing on being a better presenter. And one of his goals might be facilitating this entire week of ICW, International Coaching Week. So group coaching is truly shaped by the individuals within the group. And also recognize that each group member will have their own goals and outcomes. It is different than facilitation training for a couple of reasons, and more to come on this if we have time, but really it's that ongoing focus. There's very little content as well. So think about training. We have a lot of content. In coaching, it's not about content. It's about meeting people where they're at and asking questions, using questions to deepen awareness. A group coach might suggest a bit of pre-work, a reading, an article, like a self-evaluation checklist, but that's really the springboard to the conversation. So let me ask you this, just to check in, what do you see as some of the core elements of group coaching? Let's go back to chat, and based on what I've shared, what would you see as some of the core elements? I know we've had some chat coming back and forth, but if there was one skill that you wanted to lean into as a group coach, not a team coach, what would that be? Please take a moment and just turn to chat and let us know what is one of the skill sets you think you might be using. And notice we've already got people like Hemarth, listening, shared purpose. What are some of the other skills? Rachel is saying shared goals. And notice again, with group coaching, you may have lots of goals surfacing. KR, listening, coaching presence, and that is so important. I'm going to shorten it to VN, keeping the group focused on the goals. Manny, shared process, and a coach. So keep that coming and look at your colleagues in terms of what we're seeing with group coaching. I'm going to layer on now this notion of, is it a group or is it a team? And if you can see your screen, what I have are two graphics. So one on the right with the large circle in the middle really denotes more the group coaching process. The group coach is typically the impetus for bringing groups together, right? If I'm going into an organization, I might be the reason why people from operations and IT and HR and different parts of the business are coming together. They are also disbanding usually at the end of a group coaching process. Notice on that graphic on the right that those individual group members, which are the squares, have lots of people in their web of relationships. So actually group coaching is a great modality for culture change. It's a great modality for supporting complex change. And it's a great way to cross-fertilize ideas and processes across an organization. That, of course, on the right looks very different than what you see on the left. And in fact, in team coaching, this is what we face, what is on the left. So team coaching typically There is a web of relationships. Those relationships exist before the coach starts work with the team, and it definitely lasts after the coach leaves the team. Teams are together 24/7. And so the team coach, you'll notice, is nowhere to be seen. In fact, if we had to put a circle for the team coach, he or she would be outside this system. And I think that's a really important sort of denotion of, with team coaching, even if we are, even an internal team coach, like an internal coach, chances are we're not coaching our own team. That's because there's such a dynamic web of relationships in the team coaching environment. So I want to layer on a bit of a definition here. Lots of landscape here. And I actually wanted to bring in a couple of graphics just to let you know that this whole week, and one of the reasons why I think you're going to find across the week there's lots to still be learning about, team coaching, group coaching are really two sub-disciplines. So Choice Magazine, which is the magazine of professional coaching, has done two editions dedicated to group and team coaching recently. There's one that came out earlier this year, just a few months ago. On it, you'll see people parachuting, but you'll see great articles there about group and team coaching from early 2019. And there's another one that they issued last year. This is from 2018. It's the Taking Care of Business article. What I'll send to the chapter is a copy of this article where I get into more detail about positioning group coaching, the value of team coaching, things to look at and what the differences are. So more on that, but really team coaching, we really do want to start the conversation by saying, what is the primary focus and who are they? How are these people connected together? And in team coaching, even if it's a virtual team, there really is going to be some level of shared purpose. There needs to be a reason that teams exist. Unlike groups, which can come and form and disband, teams exist for a reason. So some of the elements we know from team effectiveness is that there needs to be shared goals, shared roles. There needs to be clear understanding of how we measure the work that we're doing. And one of the litmus tests, so again, going back to science, you heard that I was initially trained as a scientist. The litmus test for that is like, is there interdependence in our work? If there's no interdependence, we probably are not a team in its true nature. So with teams, we really do want to help that team with issues around alignment, understanding connection, seeing the common themes, and even in a team, so going back to this, we can either be focused on building individual capacity, or we can focus on building collective capacity. So back to our graphic, to be building collective capacity, we're back at this left-hand side, and really in a systems approach, which was a little bullet of today, in a systems approach, teams are this web, right? And an impact on one part of the web is going to have an impact on another. For further learning in the coaching profession on systemic team coaching, you'll want to reach out to organizations like Center for Right Relationship. Their organization and relationship systems coaching model is a systemic coaching model. So I'll say it again. It's called ORSC, O-R-S-C. O-R-S-C. Maybe I can get Nitten to just type that in. O-R-S-C. I'll type it in, but it stands for, and my R isn't working on the keypad. So O-R-S-C. Thank you. O-R-S-C. And that is from the Center for Right Relationship. They focus on, thank you, they focus on organization and relationship systems coaching. Notice it's about systems. And when we're working with a team as a system, it's really important that as a team coach, we are there to support the entire team as an entity. We will have agreements in place like no individual work. As a systems coach, I'm there to support the entire system. So I want to make sure that things are transparent in addition to, focusing on the collective. That's a little different than this other graphic to your right. And notice here, we're back to a scenario which looks more like the group coach. Well, in team coaching for in virtual and remote teams, where we might have someone in Mumbai, someone in Shanghai, someone in Dubai, Toronto, LA, Sao Paulo, chances are we are going to be a team with some collective vision, but our individual capacity might be more important to build. And so I do want to denote that there is, in some instances, particularly virtual instances, where there is still a heavy individual development focus, along with the alignment of the team. So just a reminder, yeah, thank you for muting and joining us as well. I don't want to get too hung up on this because I think we can spend a lot of time, and we have limited time today, but it is always a question that you want to be exploring with the client, right? As the coach, we are there to ask questions. We are there to pull out from our clients what they know. And a big part of this is pulling out with them, what is the entire focus? Because once we've decided whether it's group or team, we're then going to step into the dialogue. And the definition I use for team coaching is it's a sustained process. So unlike team development, team building, which is typically one-off, team coaching is an ongoing process. It's a focus on dialogue, on helping the team pause and reflect. It's also about getting them to learn and articulate their learning and then put that learning into practice. A really strong focus, and you'll see this across almost all of the team coaching models. And I would assert that there's not just one great team coaching model, there's many of them. I'll talk about a few of them. But we really are, in any team coaching process, wanting to focus on two things. The business results, okay, so getting the results, that might be increasing sales, moving a KPI, a key performance indicator. It's about getting goal clarity and making sure that we have articulation of where we're going. We have that shared vision. Team coaching is also about relationships, and these two go hand in hand. So relationships might be about helping people understand who they are on the team, how our work intersects. Do we trust each other? Do we know each other? And how do we communicate? With team coaching, really critical that we are looking at both of these elements. And I think some people hear team coaching and they think, oh, it's just that fun stuff. They're going to go to an offsite and they're going to have a kumbaya moment. Well, team coaches aren't just focusing on relationships. We are focusing on results as well. Now, for some other writers in this field, really great resources, I would point you to David Clutterbuck's book, Coaching the Team at Work. That was published in 2007, and one of the first books on team coaching. He defines team coaching as helping a team improve performance and the processes by which performance is achieved through reflection and dialogue. So notice that, like, we all really want to keep a space for reflection. And in fact, when I went to do the research for From One to Many about 6 years ago, I was asking teams and coaches, what's the value of team coaching? Almost 100% of the respondents said it really is about the reflective pause. It's about having the space and place to slow down, look around, see what's working and see what's not. Another definition for you is from Christine Thornton. And Christine also writes on team and group coaching. She's got a great book from 2010. It's in its later edition now. She writes that team coaching is coaching a team to achieve a common goal, paying attention to both individual performance and group collaboration. So notice there's a lot. I really like the writing of Peter Hawkins, who puts yet another layer on this. And in Peter's writing, he is the author of Leadership Team Coaching. He talks a lot about the team coaching continuum. This comes from his 2015 WBEX presentation, where he breaks down a continuum. So for those of you that had the question of, like, what's the difference between team facilitation and other, notice how Peter Hawkins sets it out. We can start with team facilitation, where it's a process focus on an event. We may then move into a task and process focus with team performance coaching. Then we can widen the lens to bring in stakeholders. He terms that leadership team coaching. The lens gets even further wider as we bring in not only the task and the process and our stakeholders, but the change, the culture change or organizational transformation. He terms that transformation leadership team coaching. And ultimately, we then are moving further on this continuum into systemic team coaching. So it can get very complex. And I think the key question is, let's bring it back to questions. What are those questions we want to be asking? So MG is asking a question here. When the focus of team coaching is on individual development, is the individual reflection done as an individual or wearing the hat of the team member? And I think, as soon as we are a member of a team, whatever approach we're using, we're looking at things through our lens as an individual. And the value of the team coach is to now help also people look at how does that compare, contrast, align with what's happening at the team level. I've got a few more examples to just make this illustration, because often I think we see conflict in teams when it's not only because of lack of resources, but there may be a conflict between our individual values or vision and the team vision and values. So a team coach may be looking at helping the entire team align or get closer towards individual and collective team focus. There's a lot here. As Peter continues with his definition, it's about the whole team. It's about when we're together and when we're apart. Ultimately, we are wanting to add value, and we're wanting to do that in partnership with our clients. So in whatever model you're using, whether it is individual focus or collective focus, we want to make sure that it's grounded in conversation. In all of these approaches of coaching many, we're learning as much from others as from ourselves. And so it is about those ongoing conversation touch points. As I've mentioned, we may be doing strengths work, goal setting, action planning. A really key starting point is to have team agreements. Who are we as a team? How will we operate? How will we behave no matter what? So another way of framing that is, what's acceptable and not acceptable on this team? And as you'll see in a few minutes, the starting place for a lot of team coaching engagements is to help the team articulate, what are your agreements? What are your agreements, team, for our work as a coaching process, but what are your agreements every day at the workplace? So very much, and I think I'm seeing Nitin just move. Just give me a nod. Is that a question, Nitin, or just keep going? Just keep going? Okay, you've come up on my screen, so just want to check. Really with this, we want to make sure that we are really aligning in terms of what the balance is, the balance between relationships and results, the balance between action and accountability, and that balance between the interpersonal and individual versus the collective. So value, what clients have said, it's about the team pausing and reflecting. It also helps people prioritize. When I say people here, I mean the team. It helps the team prioritize. It also creates a safe space for the team to be in dialogue with each other. And this is really important, right? We have coaching, part of our code of ethics is confidentiality. Within the team coaching realm, confidentiality is key. How is the team going to be ensuring that what they talk about remains in the coaching room? Nothing can devastate trust as much as when a member of the team goes out to talk about, hey, did you hear what Sujit said at our team meeting the other day? That is going to erode trust quickly. And I think you've got tomorrow's session on building trust and connection. So no doubt with Tish tomorrow, you'll probably have more on this topic. We do want to make sure that we are really spending time at the start talking about what is acceptable, what is not, and within that, looking at how it's going to support the team. So I'm going to keep moving. I think we've got some questions as well, but here's some of the success factors. For this work to work, what do we need? In addition to the trust and connection, we need to have leadership engagement. So part of the leadership engagement is we want to make sure that we are having dialogue before we jump into deciding that team coaching is the best modality right now. So that's a bit of a big question, but is team coaching the right modality right now? Notice beyond the role of the leader, I've said coachability, right? We talk a lot about coachability in the one-on-one environment. Is a person ready and willing to be the driver in this process? And that holds true for group and team coaching. We're not there to train. We're not there to be facilitating. We're there to help unearth with our clients what they know and where they want to go. So there is a big conversation, or there's a big series of conversations in the contracting phase of what really is going to be the best blend. Should team coaching or group coaching be paired with other training that's existing already in the organization? For a team that's going through conflict, maybe there's a training module they could participate in on having a difficult conversation. They could do that training before they join a team coach, because now they've got a shared mental model around how to have difficult conversations. So I really want you as a coach, this is that partnering element with our sponsors, our stakeholders, to look at what's the best blend, what's really going to help this entity, whether it's a group or a team, be successful. And sometimes you do get requests come in the door for team coaching or group coaching, and you realize actually they need training or they need mentoring. So really exploratory look at how this works. So notice some of the questions. Aparna is adding some really great notes here. You know, there's lots of players. We may have the supervisor. So Varna said, yes, Peter is quite clear that the supervisor is part of the team, right? We do need to have them engaged in this process. They're the ones that create space. They're the ones that ensure application. They are also leaving the space for ongoing accountability. So teams are meeting even between our team coaching touch points. And we really do, as team coaches, want to devolve it back to the team to ask them, how are you continuing to practice difficult conversations when you get into, you know, loggerheads or a tete-a-tete at your team meeting. So really, you want to be ensuring that this is going to be the right modality. So with that, I'm just trying to take in everyone's great comments here. What is a little different, though, between group and team is what's at stake. I can't reinforce this a lot. I think any of us that write in team coaching talk about just, you know, the real end result of team coaching. It is about results, it's about relationships, and it's about people's livelihoods. So we need to ensure that there is enough trust for people to step into the conversation. Hence why your topic tomorrow is about trust and connection. Teams have a rich life cycle. They have history. There's a lot more work that you're probably going to be doing around those formal and informal roles. Role fatigue, for example, is a big one on teams. Like, do we always ask the same person to do the same thing? That's great if the person wants to, but, you know, don't always assume that the same person wants to do the same things all the time. So there's a lot that can happen here in this area. I think always with new clients, and a client in a team or group coaching engagement is ultimately the end beneficiary. We may, though, involve sponsors, the person footing the bill, and we will also probably have some supervisory element. Now, in team coaching, the supervisor should be part of the team coaching process. If we are not involving them, it really, it sort of points to the question, well, what value is being lost by not having them in the room? They are the enablers. But there may be senior bosses, there may be senior levels of leadership that do want to understand this and also are the ones that can create space and resourcing for it to happen. So to the client, we want to know, what is the goal for coaching? This is where assessments can play a key role. And across the team coaching landscape, there are many great assessments you might be using. One that a lot of us, myself included, have used for years is the Team Diagnostic from Team Coaching International. And if you're not familiar with that, definitely worth a look. Team Coaching International, TCI, and they offer the Team Diagnostic. The real benefit of that is that it's a systems assessment. It will take a snapshot of the entire team across 14 productivity and positivity, so relationships and results, strengths. It's one of the very few team assessments I know of that actually will map out everything from clarity of goals to the level of trust to focusing in on where we're going. It's been around for several years, more than a decade now, almost 15 years, I think. And Phil Sondal, who is the head of Team Coaching International has a book coming out later this year on not only his assessment, but team coaching. So that's definitely a book to keep your eyes open for. It'll be out later this year. Also later this year, David Clutterbuck has been spearheading a book on the handbook of team coaching, and myself and many others are contributing chapters to that. That'll come out this year. Ultimately, we want to really zoom into, like, what's the goal here? Goals on coaching can look very different. And so ultimately, you're asking the team and those external people, what's the goal? What's important for us to have conversations about? What's any data saying? What's possible? And what focus is needed? Even beyond results and relationships, what else is needed? Some pitfalls that can emerge, again, in team coaching specifically. We face a lot of pitfalls when a team leader is not engaged. They really need to be in the room. Otherwise, there can be a lot of, finger pointing, blaming. It really entrenches people in their position. We also may have tricky issues with low trust. So more on tomorrow night's session on trust and connection. We also are facing a lot of tricky issues when team composition changes. And for many of you, you might be familiar with the work of Amy Edmonston from Harvard. She writes on a notion called teaming, which is really this notion that teams rapidly form and disband. That's happening across many industries at a very radical nature. We do want to help team members understand, what are the skills, what are the practices you can pull out of what you're learning in team coaching to apply to other instances, other team elements. And in my work, which is primarily with virtual and remote teams, helping teams understand that if I'm part of this team today with all of you in India, I'm a member of your team, but later on in the day, I might be part of a team out on the west coast of Canada. I need to think about how our practices of what we're doing here, which are best practices, can transport to my team out on the west coast of Canada. So there's a lot of layers here. We do want to be aware of when there is too much time in between sessions. Okay, so in terms of frequency and rhythm, no one best way to be coaching a team, but you'll want to make sure there's not too much time in between sessions, because otherwise they lose the focus. And then, of course, as we've been looking at today, is it a team? Is it a group? So lots of layers here. Ultimately, though, keep it simple. Bring it back to our core coaching competencies. And you're going to have further sessions on this later this week. So I will let them get into what it looks like and sounds like. We are going to still leverage all of our core coaching skills. I've really sort of foreshadowed that. But what also is useful, some new skills for this work, an understanding of group process, an understanding of not only adult education, but, group facilitation skills and having that experience. Because as much as we want to make it pure, and I've talked about purity today, as a practitioner, the reality is we may be having micro conversations that are more about facilitation. We may be bringing in a little touch point around that. How do you have radical candor in this team? It's not a full training session, but there might be elements in service. Again, here's the notion, in service to the team. So in your notes today, I'm going to share with you the continuum that I published years ago, the Coaching Many Continuum. It really does look at the distinctions between, coaching, where it is about the competencies. We're leaning into questions, goal setting by the client. We're unattached to the outcome. And that's also a big stance, right? The team coach never really knows where the conversation is going to go. That's in contrast to a team trainer, where I train, I facilitate. I know as a trainer, I'm being measured on making sure that I'm off the line in an hour, that at 45 minutes as a trainer, I'm to a certain point. As a team coach, in contrast, there's a lot of fluidity. We need to take the lead from our clients, not from any quote unquote curriculum. So whereas training is about equipping people with skills, I really see, and I think a lot of us in the team coaching space see coaching as about application and integration of this new knowledge, skills, and ability. It's where rubber hits the road. It's where we really bring these practices to life in our work. And in the midpoint, you can see facilitation, right? Great team and group coaches do leverage and understand facilitated processes. We need to help groups and teams come to consensus, to make decisions, to prioritize. We need to use those facilitation tools. But the thing is, it's not our primary focus. We need to have these in our back pocket. So I'd like you to think about, where do you stand on this continuum, and where do your clients want you to be? Okay, that's a pretty provocative question to some, but I think this is something we face every time we go to meet with a new client. Are they really asking for coaching, or do they need something else? So we need to be asking this question. I'd like you to just share with us in chat, where do you naturally see yourself along this continuum of capital C coaching, facilitation and training when it comes to coaching many? Or do you sort of see that maybe you actually are more of a trainer? There's no right or wrong here, but just be clear on what you naturally gravitate to, and think about where your clients want you to go. I often share this quick story as our responses are coming in. I share this quick story of one of my first group coaching engagements, and I was really excited. This is maybe going back 15 years now. I had a manager at an organization that was like a professional association call me. She said, "Jennifer, we have a whole bunch of newly credentialed members. We'd love to offer group coaching so that they can figure out what's next on their career path." And I was really excited. This stakeholder had done their research. They knew what coaching was. And I said, "Do you really want me to coach? We're going to look at their vision for their career. We're going to look at what strengths they have." She's like, "Yes, I'm sure this is what our members want." So I showed up like a young coach and figured, we're going to go straight into what's your vision for your career? What are your strengths? What do you have going for you? And as I met that first group, the number one question for the group was, how do I write a better resume or CV? How do I write a better curriculum vitae? It was very clear that the group members wanted training. The sponsor wanted coaching, but the group members wanted training. And as human beings, we're not going to listen to something we don't want. So we had to revise that whole engagement. It was supposed to run over 3 months. And what eventually happened was she, as the organization, brought in speakers to talk about resume writing, to talk about interviewing skills. And that allowed me as the group coach to be still focusing on these areas of vision and values and strengths. And I think it was a big, big, big wake-up call for me as I stepped into this part of my career. And as we were really trying to figure out what is group coaching as an industry, to say we need to be very, very clear in the onset of where you are. So I'm not going to go with this. We only have 8 minutes left. I want to take us into the core elements. And as you can appreciate, we are spending a lot of time even before we start the conversation, right? It's not just about showing up and saying, "Hey, where do we want to go?" With groups, you may meet group members for a pre-programmed call, asking them, what do you want to focus on? What are your goals? What will success look like? Do that before you step into the room, because even with a group of 4 or 8 or 15 individual group members, you're going to have a lot of diverse goals and a lot of diverse success measures. The better you can understand that collective nature of the group before you start, the easier things will flow, and it's going to be a lot less pressure on you. Contrast that with the team, where we've spent most of our time today. In a team coaching, again, the focus is primarily collective. Pre-program, you may be doing that assessment. You're doing a lot of work with the sponsor, with other stakeholders in the organization. You're really defining that, in fact, it is training. It's coaching, not training. So really, we do want to look at what is the best sequencing. You'll notice across your group, several of you are looking at the journey of sequencing of training and into facilitation, etc. Ultimately, we are going to do things in our first session like creating our ways of working, group agreements, having people articulate and share their goals. I do a lot with a one-page plan, and Nitin talked a little bit about my different books. 2 of my latest books. So last year I published 2 new books. One is geared for coaches. It's called The Coaching Business Builder. It's all about coaching business development. But the second one is for virtual and remote team leaders, and it's called plan, do, track. And for many years, I've been talking in our industry about the importance of a one-page plan. This really is like one page, and I'll send a copy out to you so you can have it. But as you can see here, it's just a one page where people are able to write down, articulate their top goals for the coaching process. This becomes really important to make individual goals visible for group coaching. If you could imagine, we're part of a group. There might be 15 of us. Everyone has different goals, but I might know that, you know what, Nitin's really interested in getting a hang on this webinar stuff. Maybe he and I should be connecting for further conversations, or maybe I can be offering resources to him. So a really important component of your first session ongoing is help people or lead the space, support people in articulating what their goals are for the process. Think about how you're going to share them. As you can see, there's a lot that's on the go all the way through to your post-program. We have lots happening, and I'm going to have to cut off in just a few minutes, but you're going to get these slides. So first session, things like identify your ways of working, focus on those goals, connect people. And again, your session tomorrow is about building trust and connection. Ultimately, we need to meet where groups are, and I think probably some of your future sessions will look at Tuckman's model. Groups and teams are constantly moving up and down the staircase of the forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. Tuckman made this model back in the 70s. I see it play out even in virtual teams. And in From One to Many, I wrote a lot about it. So I've pulled in some of that content from One to Many. You can read through this in terms of the needs, the role of the coach, and focus areas at each one of these 5 stages. Given our time today, I'm not going to go through this, but it is in your slides, and I have done other presentations. You can just Google Effective Group Coach, and you'll see me talk more about that. I want to leave you in these last few minutes with a couple of best practices. Number 1, it's not about content. Less is more. Group and team coaching is about the conversation. So really think about how you can support learning before the session, in between the sessions, after the work. Sequencing this is really, really important so that people are ready for the coaching conversation. We also want to make sure that we're building trust and connection, and this is your focus tomorrow. So more on that tomorrow night. We can really, the work can look very different. We need to know our client. So questions to really ask the client, and notice that today we've been differentiating between end client, sponsors, supervisors. What is it that your clients really want to explore? What's keeping them up at night? When are they available? And how often can they meet? How do they want to connect? It's very insightful to really be listening for the diversity that comes back at you in terms of these questions. At the end of the day, this work is about an intimate conversation space. It is not about talking at people. So what I've done with you today is not group coaching. It is not team coaching. This is training. Really want to make that distinction. We want to have a variety of approaches. We want to make sure that we are arcing out and thinking about all these elements, as I've said, in the sequencing before and after. If there's only a few things you can do, make sure that you're spending time creating agreements at the start of your work, ensuring confidentiality, building trust and connection. Coming again tomorrow. I can't underscore how important this is for this work, because if there is not trust and connection, we're not going to drop into the coaching space, right? We're not going to drop into coaching. We will stay at facilitation and training with teams and groups. We're not going to drop into the coaching space without trust and connection. And make sure that there is that ongoing conversation, which may take place online through emails in, your own private ecosystems between group members. We are nearing the end of our call. So given that this might be the first of 5 sessions you're attending this week, I'd like you to write down, grab a pen right now, and please take note, what is one step you are going to take as a result of today's session? What is one thing you want to remember out of all that we discussed today? And if you're going to put this in practice, what's your deadline on this? Is this a Q2 project? Is this something you want to have out in the world by the end of June or the end of the year? What resources do you need? And over the next 5 days, or including tonight, you're going to get a lot of resources coming your way. How will you track it, and who will you be accountable to? I've got a whole treasure chest of resources. This is an area I've written on, spoken on for the last decade plus, 15 years now actually. So do check out the different resources. And I've included a reading list as well, books that you may want to tap into. For your listening pleasure and reading pleasure, be sure to download 2 digital chapters, one on case studies for group coaching, one on case studies for team coaching. They're available to you at FromOneToMany.com/downloads, and make sure you enter the access code there as well. It's been a pleasure to be with you here today. I think I am going to get the virtual rope because it is now top of the hour. Nitin, thank you for having me, and I will let you wrap us up.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. It's right on time, first of all. Thank you for doing that. Do you have a couple of minutes to take few questions?
I do. I have a few minutes. So let's keep going for those that can stay on. I'm glad to see that this can resonate, right? It's a whole layer of lots of different things. And just trust that in the next 4 evenings, you're going to be able to drop down into a lot of these key elements. So Nitin, what questions do we have? Let's take maybe the next 10 minutes. If we need that, I've got another 10 minutes.
Yeah, so one of the questions is greater self-awareness or greater team awareness. What is the focus here?
So again, I think it goes back to, is it greater awareness of myself or the team? What is the lens? And I'll make it really practical. Let's say I'm a member of a hospital team and we work on shift. Okay, so I might be working this week as part of the day shift and next week as part of the evening shift. It's going to be really important that I develop self-awareness, but what is also important across that whole department is that we've got shared agreements on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, so that I know if I'm on day shift or evening shift, it's the same thing. And that's really that collective focus. We want to make sure that we're building collective capability in a team coaching engagement. So the balance, is it 50-50? Is it 20-80? Is it 80-20? That's going to be something you and the clients need to determine. And it's a great question to ask your group and team. What's the balance here?
Okay, thank you.
That's what we ask, right? We're asking the question. All right, Nitin.
Another question it was asked is that it appears to me that team coaching essentially aims at working on team beliefs and experiences that they give each other while working as a team. Would it be right?
Yeah, so I think the primary, for teams today, we can have teams that are starting new projects, and a primary focus will be how are we successful with that project. You might have established teams that are spinning their wheels or not getting the results that they want. And that might be because their roles aren't clear, or there may be conflict that they're not able to work through. So in team, ultimately, we are putting the attention to the team, to the results and the relationships of that team. How can they do their work better, quicker, and faster? Do you think that answers the question, Nitin?
I don't know. Is there something called team's belief as together, or is it the individual belief that sums up as a team belief?
So say that again. I didn't quite catch that.
So the question was that the question that was asked is that it appears to me that team coaching essentially aims at working on team beliefs. So I was just trying to understand: is there something called team belief, or is it the sum and total of the individual beliefs that becomes team belief?
So when you're focusing more on the individual in I'm going to call it grouping, right? More of an individual in a grouping of 8-10 people, you're typically then dropping more into a group coaching approach because we're not putting attention on that shared experience, shared collective. Where you might see that is perhaps in a community group, right? In a community group, we come together. There's a lot of focus on me because we're only active as a community on one project a year. So there may be more of an individual focus in that layer. There's a lot of grays, right? And I think my presentation today pointed to the fact that it's not always discrete, right? We have a lot of blend. We have a lot of grays and everything. So keep going back to asking, who is the client? How are they related to each other? What is the interdependence in this grouping, in this 8 to 10 people? And that will help you determine what it is.
Okay, thanks. I'll just, Sanji has raised a hand. I'll just allow him to ask a last question. MG, please go ahead.
Just an extension of the previous question.
Mhm.
Typically, coaching is about thought-provoking questions to make the client go deeper into herself or himself in a
Yes.
journey of self-discovery. And
Mhm.
in a team, when there are individuals, especially very senior leaders who have got firm goals, very accomplished people,
Mhm.
and they do not think like a team except when they think about their boss's goals.
Yes.
The self goals are very clear. So
Mhm.
when you coach such teams, whose awareness are you working on?
Yeah.
Because the belief system, you just have two new members, powerful two members join the team. The whole belief system of the team can go for an overhaul, especially if you have millennial people joining the team.
Mhm.
So, whose beliefs and thoughts and values are you working on when you're working on promoting awareness?
Yeah. Well, this is the question, right? And this is a question we're asking that entity. How are you going to operate? Are you always going to be 8 silos, or is it important for you to develop a team collective, right? And it's not up to me. It's up to them to decide what do they need to do. But to your point, MG, it's the entrenchment, right? So back to, is this entity ready and able to be coached? Is this the right modality?
That's
And that is a question. And again, I think there are certain, it's not just levels, but there are many instances where this may not be the best starting point. Maybe you do need to start developing some understanding, and a team building one-off offsite might be a great starting point for the team to start to get to know each other and start to develop a little bit of awareness. But as team coaches, group coaches, going under the waterline, right? If the trust, the connection is not there, we're just going to stay above it. We're not getting into beliefs, values, assumptions, perspectives, which is truly the landscape of the coach.
So there's something called team coachability.
Yeah, it is. And that's why I spent a lot of time today talking about contracting, because it's not I've got the request, let's jump right into it. We need to meet that grouping where they're at. And that may mean that actually we realize as a conversation ensues, in addition to these conversations, there are other types of conversations that need to happen. So it's not like, even from a marketing or sales perspective, like there's a lot that goes on. It's not, and I don't ever want to compare, because we shouldn't compare any of the modalities with each other, but it's often easy to onboard one coaching individual client at a time. To onboard a team coaching client, there is so much in this space. So give yourself enough space, time, resourcing to make sure that it's really, you're having the series of conversations that are needed.
Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. And thank you for making that really specific, because that's what we need. Every scenario is a little bit different.
Thank you everyone for participating, and thank you, Jennifer, for the fantastic session. I'm sure, and I would encourage everybody, if you are not been able to ask the questions now, please send those questions across in the email, and I will reach out to Jennifer to see if she would be happy to answer those.
Well, fantastic.
Thanks a lot again for joining.
Yeah, thank you. And I would just encourage free to check out the resources, as well as one that I didn't mention. If you're on Facebook, Effective Group Coaching is where you can find me. There's a lot of information over there as well. So thank you, Nitin. Thank you, Chapter. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Have a nice day, Jennifer.
Take care. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I can see people exiting. Please join on the other events of Coaching Week, International Coaching Week. Everybody who has joined the webinar, you will get the CCU as you are getting in your email. But you will only get the CCU if you are a member of the Bangalore group. If you are not the member of Bangalore chapter group, there is a fees which is associated for getting the CCU.
Thanks, CC. Hi.